The streets of Hammersmith were shrouded in thick fog that night, the silence broken only by the hurried footsteps of Francis Smith. His heart raced as he gripped the cold metal of his shotgun, his breath coming out in ragged bursts of mist. Ahead, through the swirling shadows, he saw it, a figure in white, gliding towards him. His hand trembled. Was it the ghost that had haunted these streets for months? Or something far worse? Smith called out, his voice swallowed by the night, but the figure kept coming. In that moment, with dread clawing at his spine, he raised his weapon and fired. The sound echoed in the darkness, and as the smoke cleared, Smith realized, too late, what he had done. The ghost was not what it seemed. This is the forgotten Hammersmith Ghost murder, a haunting in London. In the dark, fog-filled streets of 19th century London, fear had a name, the Hammersmith Ghost. In 1803, reports of a ghost haunting the Hammersmith district began to circulate, sending shock waves of terror through the area. What started as a tale of spectral appearances soon spiraled into a terrifying and deadly chain of events that left one man dead, another on trial for murder, and an entire city questioning the nature of fear, superstition, and the unseen forces that lurk in the night. This is the true tragic story of the Hammersmith Ghost and the murder that followed, a forgotten chapter in London's haunted history, where the line between life and death became chillingly blurred. The ghost first appeared in late 1803, described as a tall, gaunt figure, often draped in white, and sometimes seen with horns or a black cloak. It was said to stalk the narrow, dimly lit streets of Hammersmith at night, terrifying anyone who dared to walk alone after dark. Many believed that the ghost was the restless spirit of a man who had taken his own life years earlier and was buried in the local churchyard. In those days, suicides were not allowed to be buried in consecrated ground, and some believed this punishment had left the man's soul condemned to wander the earth. Locals spoke of the ghost appearing suddenly before them, moaning or making strange, ghastly noises. The sightings spread rapidly, and fear gripped the district. Men and women alike avoided the streets after sundown, and those who had to venture out did so in groups, armed with whatever weapons they could find: sticks, knives, and even pistols. But despite their precautions, more and more sightings were reported. People described being chased by the ghost or even attacked by it. One night, a pregnant woman encountered the specter and was so frightened that she collapsed, dying from the shock soon after. Another man, walking home late at night, claimed that the ghost had seized him by the throat before disappearing into the mist. Fear turned into hysteria, and the legend of the Hammersmith Ghost grew darker by the day. By the end of 1803, the community was in a full-blown panic. Some believed the ghost was a demon, others a vengeful spirit, but all agreed that something had to be done. A group of men formed a nightly patrol, determined to capture the ghost or at least confront whatever was haunting their streets. These men, armed with guns and clubs, were not just battling a phantom, but their own growing terror. The patrols grew more desperate as the ghost continued to elude them, appearing in different parts of Hammersmith and vanishing before anyone could catch it. One of the men determined to end the haunting was Francis Smith, a 29-year-old excise officer who had heard enough of the ghost's terrorizing ways. He joined the patrol on the night of January 3, 1804, a cold, foggy evening. With a loaded shotgun in hand, Smith walked through the narrow, dark alleys of Hammersmith, his senses on high alert. As he patrolled, Smith saw a figure in white coming towards him from the darkness. Without hesitation, and gripped by fear, he called out for the figure to stop. The figure did not respond. In a moment of panic, certain he was facing the Hammersmith Ghost, Smith raised his shotgun and fired. The figure fell to the ground, lifeless. What Smith did not know in that moment of terror was that the figure he had shot was not a ghost at all, but a man named Thomas Millwood, a local bricklayer. Millwood had been wearing his work clothes, a white apron and white trousers, which in the dim light had made him appear ghostly. Tragically, Millwood had been returning home from a visit to his parents' house when he crossed paths with Smith. The aftermath of the shooting was immediate and devastating. When Smith realized what he had done, he was horrified. Millwood's family was devastated, and the community was left in shock. The haunting terror of the Hammersmith Ghost had led to a very real death, and the ghost hunt had turned into a murder investigation. Francis Smith was arrested and put on trial for murder. During the trial, Smith's defense was clear. He believed he was shooting at the ghost that had terrorized the town. Witnesses, including Millwood's wife, testified that Millwood had been mistaken for the ghost before because of his white work clothes, and they had warned him about wearing them at night. But despite this, the jury found Smith guilty of murder. The sentence was death by hanging, but the story did not end there. The trial of Francis Smith had caused a sensation, drawing attention far beyond the district of Hammersmith. People debated whether Smith, who genuinely believed he was defending himself against a supernatural threat, should be held accountable for killing an innocent man. The trial raised questions about fear, superstition, and how much influence the fear of the supernatural should have in the courts of law. Eventually, Smith's death sentence was commuted to 1 year of hard labor, but the impact of the trial lasted much longer. The courts had been forced to grapple with the idea that belief in the supernatural, whether justified or not, had deadly consequences. As for the Hammersmith Ghost, it seemed to vanish after Millwood's death, but the chilling legacy remained. In a strange twist of fate, the ghost itself turned out to be nothing more than a hoax. A local man named John Graham later confessed that he had been pretending to be the ghost to scare his apprentices, not realizing how far the panic would spread. He had no idea his prank would result in an innocent man's death and a dark chapter in London's history. The Hammersmith ghost murder remains a powerful reminder of the dangers of fear and superstition. What began as an eerie series of ghost sightings escalated into hysteria, and in the end, it claimed a very real life. The streets of Hammersmith were never the same, and the case continued to be referenced in legal debates for years afterward as a cautionary tale of what can happen when fear of the unknown leads to violence. Though the ghost may have been a man in disguise, the tragedy of Thomas Millwood's death and the terror that gripped the town remains a haunting piece of London's Gothic past. To this day, some say that on foggy winter nights, if you walk the streets of Hammersmith, you might still hear the distant echoes of a shotgun blast, or perhaps catch a glimpse of a pale figure in the mist, reminding us that sometimes it is not the supernatural we should fear most, but the darkness in our own minds. This real-life account of the Hammersmith Ghost provides a chilling reminder of the power of belief and the deadly consequences that can arise when fear overpowers reason.